Alright, Marvel Newsfront has been a little slow this week in comparison to recent ones, but I did find an interesting interview I wanted to talk about. So this is an interview with Elizabeth Olsen, and they did ask her a question about WandaVision, and she said, "WandaVision is such an incredible concept. It's the first time we get to understand her as the Scarlet Witch that she is in the comics, and that's exciting for me because I haven't yet been able to give her that time on screen, so that's going to be fun. She's always been a representation of mental health and illness in the comic book series, and her major role is handling that stigma within Marvel." That was just a little piece of the interview Elizabeth Olsen did with the New York Times. I will link the whole thing in the description below if you want to read it. There's not really much Marvel stuff other than what I just mentioned, but I think it was worth, it's worth a read if you're interested in her career in general like I am. But that little bit that I just read kind of confirms something I've suspected about WandaVision for a while, considering what we know about the series and what we know about all the trauma Scarlet Witch has dealt with in her past, both in the MCU and in the storyline before she joined the MCU. Her parents died and everything, and then we know what happened when she joined the MCU and what's happened since. That the series would be dealing with mental illness, mental health in some sort of way. I didn't necessarily expect them to be explicit about it. I know a lot of superhero media shows them dealing with the trauma, and I'm usually pretty chill about that because, you know, it's not really meant to be a specific mental illness or anything. It's just people deal with trauma, and I mean, they deal with dangerous situations in these movies, comics, whatever, and it'd be a little weird if they weren't kind of messed up for a bit, to be honest. So, yeah, but now that it's come, like Elizabeth Olsen, she works on WandaVision, she come right out and said, yes, Scarlet Witch is supposed to be a representation of mental illness in the MCU. That kind of puts a higher expectation upon it, at least for me. And some people might say that's not fair, but I think it's totally fair because Marvel Studios like the MCU is the biggest media franchise in the world at this point. And therefore, people watch, like, it has more viewers than pretty much almost anything else. So people watching this are seeing the representation of whatever they're seeing, whether it be racial representation, sex representation, sexuality representation, which they seem to be getting into in Phase 4. And now, well, not now, they've already done some mental health representation, which I'll get to in a minute. People are going to be seeing that, and that's going to be like one of the biggest examples of mental illness representation in mainstream media. And Marvel, like I said, has done it a couple times before. Iron Man 3 showed Tony Stark having a panic attack. And I was like, I remember sitting in the theater, this was 2013, and I was like, whoa, like, I really relate to that, and I don't really see that a lot in mainstream movies. That's just not something that really happens. And now ever since then, more and more mental health discussions have come into mainstream media, which I think is great. But still, like, it's not like, Marvel is still huge, and it's a big deal for that to be portrayed in a Marvel movie. And for an Endgame, I know a lot of people connected with that, and I know some people had issues with that too, with how his depression was portrayed. But I know a lot of people felt like they were being represented and they could relate to him in that. So yeah, I think that it's a big deal. So the fact that we're getting more of this in WandaVision is going to be something I'm going to be keeping an eye on, and especially with her arc moving forward, because there have been some rumors of Scarlet Witch kind of basically going off the handle and turning into a villain potentially for Doctor Strange and possibly beyond. That's kind of, I really hope don't happen now that they've said she's going to be representation of mental illness. I think Marvel doing the mental illness thing as a responsibility to make it accurate. I mean, like, obviously the superhero stuff isn't going to be like accurate to real life, but like the feelings and like what you experience in your mind, what the characters are experiencing, should feel real. And up to this point, it has. So I think they've done a pretty good job with that. What I'm more concerned with is how I don't know how to explain this, but like, you know how we say representation matters in media, and like with the MCU, like, it's great to have lots of female superheroes and black superheroes, and we're getting Shang-Chi for like an Asian superhero and all this kind of other stuff. And it means a lot to people in those communities to see themselves represented on screen. And it's the same with me as someone with mental illness. It's a big deal to me, and I know it's a big deal to a lot of other people. This is a big reason why I connected with Iron Man so much, and I love Iron Man so much, and why I really kind of got upset whenever it sort of looked like they might kind of turn him into the bad guy, especially in like Age of Ultron, Civil War. I'm like, don't you dare turn me into a bad guy, don't turn me into a villain. Like, this is my mental health representation. This is such a big deal for me to see on the screen and have it portrayed and know that so many people are watching. And seeing that someone with a mental illness be like, it meant a lot to me to see them be like portrayed in heroic ways, and that you can still do things and overcome your obstacles even if you're dealing with them. And I hope it's the same for Wanda. I hope she's not a villain, as a result of her just messing around with the I don't know what it is. It's the multiverse, but also like the sitcom verse. I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this. I'm nervous. I hope if she does become a villain, she learns how to deal with her grief properly, and so she can still be a hero dealing with grief ultimately in the end. I should also point out, and sorry for the cut just then, that I don't need them to explicitly talk about the mental illness all the time. It can be something in the background. If we know someone's dealing with it and we see them deal with it, but it's not like we're going to have huge discussions about this all the time. It's going to be like a whole long lecture. Like, I don't want that from Marvel. It's supposed to be fun, but I like that they're including this in their stories if they do it right, and I hope they do. And yeah, so let me know what you think about all this. Let me know if there's something you connect with in a character in Marvel for some sort of representation, especially with mental health, because I know like there's some characters I didn't mention. I know the Hulk was suicidal at one point. I know Bucky is a character a lot of people dealing with trauma and mental illness have connected with. It'll be interesting when we get to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I'm kind of nervous for that partly because of that. We'll see. Yeah, that's going to be a time. But yeah, let me know, and I will see you for another video soon, hopefully.